Hello, my name is Alexandra Golfus, and today I will be reflecting on the professional counseling perspective of assessing and treating disasters, and more specifically, collective trauma within disasters. There are 6 stages of disasters that we will expand on. To expand on the 6 stages, I actually have 3 specific questions given by my professor in a counseling graduate program. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first question is 1. Collective trauma is described as a blow to the basic tissues of social life that damages the bonds attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of community. Describe how you might interpret this for someone who just went through a disaster. Okay, let's see. So basically, as a counselor, I would kind of want to let the patient know that that's basically explaining that collective trauma is a little bit different than, let's say, a normal life crisis, in the sense that, their typical coping mechanisms and resources may not be available. Let's say that they used to go to a church and really find strength in church in their moments where they just needed some type of help, and now their church got blown away in a hurricane. That's a completely different, aspect to it that we have to consider. So to define it in a more of a simpler term, I would describe it as collective trauma is unique as it entails a disaster that has impacted the community as a whole, leaving every aspect of a person's life affected. This devastation to the community is massive as it strips the people of the community of many of their old coping mechanisms, such as worship at the church. So a community that is experiencing collective trauma will find their lives are forever changed. Collective trauma experiences often include the loss of life, including family, friends, and even pets. They can definitely, you always hear about emotional support animals. Well, you can even lose that. Additionally, you have loss of memories that you may not typically think of, like the church where you were baptized and your parents got married at could be gone in just a blink of an eye during a collective trauma, highlighting just how life-altering disasters and specifically collective trauma can be. People lose a life that they knew before, including workplace, schools, and even as simple as places to eat. You used to go to Popeyes and get you a basket of chicken to feel comforted, and now you can't do that. It's not as easy, right? So recognizing the unique aspects to collective trauma can help counselors assess and treat clients going through this. 2, what kind of impact may the stress of going through a disaster have on a person's mental well-being? The impacts of disasters are both immediate and long-term. And so it's pretty easy to think of the immediate one, but we'll kind of go ahead and jump into both in a little bit. Anyway, so while the reactions and behaviors expressed will often range and change, it is normal for victims to feel stress, anxiety, grief, and worry. And I honestly want to change that word victim to survivors, because that's the mindset that we're trying to get them into. But changes in thoughts and behaviors are often expressed as survivors experience intense or unpredictable feelings. It's important that clients understand that the feelings and intensity of feelings they experience may vary with time. It's critical that clients learn to notice and accept how they feel, as awareness is the first step to finding solutions if problems may arise. For example, raising awareness within a client as to why some of their relationships may be under strain and how that is a normal reaction after disaster can help preventing future isolating behaviors that are detrimental to learning to cope in a positive manner. The sense of community is very important in helping people heal, we have often seen. Emphasizing the importance of taking care of your mental health during emergency situations is a critical component to ensuring any pre-existing mental health conditions are not worsened or triggered as well. It's definitely another big thing that we need to look out for. By making sure patients gain clarity in their thoughts and awareness, counselors can help enable their safety, both physically and even mentally, like currently and in the future, which is awesome. 3, now this is where the stages come in. So the recovery process has several stages. What are these stages, and how/when is a counselor needed throughout a person's recovery? Keep stumbling over my words today. When counselors approach clients with collective trauma in disaster scenarios, there are 6 commonly accepted stages of the recovery process to consider during client assessment and treatment. Kind of just reiterating the question, but you know how that goes. The first stage is the pre-disaster stage. So this stage is signified by a lack of awareness throughout the community and is marked by kind of fear and uncertainty. But the fear hasn't really kicked in yet because the victims often survivors, I guess they're about to be survivors, often cannot fathom a disaster of huge magnitude happening. It is kind of more so chalked up to an event on the big screen, or just something you hear about on the news, until it happens to you. You never realize this can really happen. So that's kind of what's going on in the pre-disaster stage. On top of that, the cost of evacuation impacts people's decisions on if they view evacuation as even necessary. There's cost of travel, which is food, living, and all that starts to add up. During this stage, though, counselors still can actually play kind of a proactive duty in preparing for all this. They can go ahead and review any disaster training or knowledge that we have, and even seeking out any support community centers or anything that's really preparing for the storm and helping out there as well. And also just, tuning into your current clients as well and kind of seeing where they're at and assessing how prepared they are. So then we have the second stage, which is the disaster stage. So as it sounds, it's when the disaster hits. During the second phase, the disaster is currently occurring. Most often, the moment of disasters are quick. However, that is not always the case, as seen during Hurricane Katrina. During Hurricane Katrina, the disaster was prolonged by additional series of events, including the break of the levees. It just kept coming, which was definitely, no one saw that coming. This phase is also marked by intense emotional reactions, ranging from shock and panic to denial and disbelief. Counselors should aim to help clients focus on their immediate needs and validate their emotions as well. The third phase is the heroic phase. This phase occurs after the initial impact of the disaster has passed and the neighboring communities and countries place focus on assisting the impacted area with resources. This is when we often see lots of media coverage as well, showing the devastation of the aftermath, triggering people's empathy. So, we're starting to get lots of involvement. Through heroic action, clients often begin to deny the realities of their loss. During this stage, however, energy levels are high, yet productivity is often low. It is important that counselors help clients avoid burnout, which will limit their ability to accept and cope with a new reality in the future as the shock wears off. The fourth phase is the honeymoon phase. My eyes kind of jumped around there on my notes. Where are we? Oh, it's because my paper did jump around. All right, back we are to the honeymoon phase. All right, fourth phase, honeymoon phase. During the honeymoon phase, there is a shift in emotions that occur. A sense of comfort is instilled by the amount of help being provided. Survivors often start to feel optimistic and assume things will return to normal quickly. While the emotions of the honeymoon phase are positive, that doesn't mean that counselors still don't have a duty to do. We can stay actively supporting of our clients and the recovery process through things such as promoting fundraising during this time, as it often starts to decline in the next phase, which is the fifth phase, or the disillusionment phase. All right. During the fifth phase, the true impact of what has occurred really sinks in and hits the community as optimism turns into discouragement. Survivors come to terms with the reality that no amount of heroic action can change the fact that loss has occurred. As harsh realities and fears begin to grow, the response teams begin to fade as nonprofit money begins to run out. Additionally, media coverage begins to fade, and with it, decrease in contributions. occurs, but yet there is still mass needs that remain. This phase is especially critical as the disaster impacts are being felt by both survivors and responders. It is during this phase that there is an increase in fatigue, suicide attempts, despair, and depression. The ongoing stressors begin to take a toll and negative reactions start surfacing. As the reality of the disaster sets in, it is the counselor's job to ensure that survivors / clients learn new coping techniques and how to access those additional resources as well. You sometimes in these situations may come across someone, let's say in a shelter, and you see them once and then they lose your card, you didn't bring your card, or whatever, you ran out of cards, and now you may not see them again. So you really want to make sure that you include additional resources outside of you for that, also just for different sources that you could possibly collaborate. You should never take it upon yourself to be the one-stop shop for helping these people heal. However, we can guide them best that we can, both through our own personal therapy and also guiding them towards additional resources. So this brings us to the sixth and final stage, the reconstruction phase. During the reconstruction stage, victims begin to adjust to the newly established sense of normal as they begin to rebuild their lives while mourning their losses. In order to rebuild, clients must process their collective grief and use new positive coping mechanisms to rebuild their lives. Counselors can help clients become aware of the positive opportunities to do things differently than before presented following the disaster, fostering a sense of hope as they begin to build a new life. So that kind of wraps it all up. If anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot me a message either for my class or YouTube. Thank you for watching. I have included some resources that I used for my response. Be sure to check them out for more information. Thank you. Have a good day.